It is Monday, July 22nd, 2024 at Protestia Studios. This is your intelligence briefing coming to you from Protestia.com, where, as always, go to find all of the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. Sign up for our Insurgency email blast and support us on Patreon like the wonderful patrons who bring this program to you by going over to patreon.com/Protestia, starting at $5.95 a month, ad-free browsing, other levels of support to get you other goodies, and the warm feeling in your heart knowing that you are doing your part to support the ongoing work of polemics and discernment ministry. Let's get into the headlines. First headline at Protestia.com. New TV show The Promised Land features Moses' story in style of The Office or Parks and Recreation. A new TV comedy has been released featuring the aftermath of Moses and the Israelites' escape from Egypt, telling the Exodus story told through the mockumentary style of The Office or Parks and Rec. Created by Mitch Hudson, who cut his teeth as an assistant director on The Chosen, the series stars, I'm probably going to mispronounce these names, but Wasim Nomani as Moses, Majid Sayas as Aaron, and Shiran Khan as Miriam, riffing on everything from war with the Amalekites. No, we don't need to look that way. It's a bloody, horrible battle when the camera attempts to pan to the fighting, to Moses dealing with the monotony of daily complaints of Israelites about their situation, from pestilence, growth on their feet, practicalities of gathering manna, to a parent's frustration because their son won't leave home at 14 rather than the typical 18-year time frame in modern times. We have, I believe we have embedded the full episode in this article. I haven't seen it yet, so school's out on whether it will be entertaining, faithful, which of course is the most important part, or what the deal is, but you can go check that out over at Protestia.com. Next headline, Subway worker denies street preachers service over anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ shirt message. We know Subway is a franchise, so we wouldn't attempt to blame this on all of the Subway Corporation, but a controversial street preacher group is up in arms after being refused service at a Wisconsin Subway store, with at least one activist present revealing he's planning to sue the sandwich chain, wearing, quote, "Homosex is a sin, abortion is murder, and Planned Parenthood murders children and rapes their mothers." The five evangelists, including David Grisham, who made news last year after dressing up in a Grinch costume and telling children that Santa isn't real, are seen on film trying to order sandwiches, then being refused service, with the woman admitting it was on account of their t-shirts. I'm not going to go through and play the whole thing, but we have embedded the Twitter post, the X post that has this in here, as well as a screenshot from Facebook of one of the guys involved indicating exactly what went on. But you can go to read more about this over at Protestia.com, see the video, and decide for yourself. Let's move on. Next headline at Protestia, Village Church responds to blowback from hiring Matt Chandler's dad as a custodian, who had previously confessed to child sex abuse. The Village Church, led by Pastor Matt Chandler, has responded to rumblings over revelations that they employed Steve Chandler, Matt's father, to be their custodian, even though he admitted to engaging in child sex abuse decades earlier. In an episode of the Bodies Behind the Bus podcast, former member and lay elder Chris and children's ministry worker Anna shared that in 2019, during the growing storm of sex abuse within the SBC, and I'm not sure how growing it was, but you know what we're talking about, they learned that Steve Chandler, who was hired in 2007 and worked until 2012 as the church's custodian, had confessed to molesting a child 4 decades ago. We do have some links about the Village Church and Matt Chandler in this article, but according to the podcast, according to Chris in the podcast, he was told that Steve, quote, confessed in California, had intensive court-ordered therapy, and he had gone through steps in recovery, and that it was one of those recovery meetings that he confessed that he'd been a perpetrator of sexual abuse. With sex abuse reform the topic du jour, the Village Church leadership met together with lawyers in tow to hash out how and even if they were going to reveal their past employment of Steve. That year in 2019, they initially decided to release a statement insisting that Steve was reformed and that safety protocols had been established around him during his time there, ensuring he was always being monitored in the same manner. We at Protestia would not take a guess at this point about exactly how all of that went or what safety protocols may or may not have been in place. And I would argue, as I've argued before about other things, that it really depends on the status of this man's soul to the best of their ability to know at the time he did these things, in terms of how appropriate it would be to employ him at the church. If the sin in question happened as a regenerate believer, I would argue that that makes a difference. But ultimately, Village Church dropped the incident, did not mention it further, which Chris attributes to a sense of pressure he felt to leave it be. We have a link here to a statement sent to church leaders, or I guess it would be the article over at churchleaders.com talking about this. The Village Church said it, quote, cares deeply about protecting children and the most vulnerable among us, and has, quote, made it one of our top priorities, not only to provide for the spiritual care of our members and guests, but also to provide for the safety of those attending our gatherings. You can read more about this over at Protestia, and we'll see if there's anything more to report as the story continues. Next headline at Protestia: Christian billionaire Bill Wang found guilty of Wall Street fraud. This coming to us from Ministry Watch. One of the wealthiest evangelicals in the U.S. celebrated as part of a, quote, new evangelical donor class. Sun Ku Kwang, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, goes by Bill, now faces the possibility of life behind bars. On July 10th, after a grueling 8-week trial that parsed the complexities of finance law, a New York jury found Huang guilty of racketeering, securities fraud, market manipulation, and wire fraud. The jury convicted him on all but one of 11 counts, each of which carries a maximum 20-year sentence. His fall from grace came in March 2021 when his now defunct Archegos, I think that's how it's pronounced, capital management firm's high-risk investments led to the sudden erasure of $100 billion in stock market value from companies such as Viacom, CBS, and Tencent, banks that had given loans to Archegos. Is it Archegos or Archgeos? I don't know. They had given loans to them, lost $10 billion, and the company itself lost $36 billion. There is a link at the bottom of our curated post here to head over to Ministry Watch and read the rest of this story. Let's move on. Next headline: the Satanic Temple wins lawsuit against a school that tried to stop their, quote, after-school Satan club. The Freedom from Religion Foundation has reached a settlement on behalf of the Satanic Temple, according to a recent press release, after a judge ruled that Shelby County Board of Education in Memphis, Tennessee, violated their First Amendment rights by trying to stop the formation of an after-school Satan club. It's not an unexpected blow, given that the Satanic Temple is, quote, the only satanic religious organization recognized as a church by the IRS and the federal court system. In this case, the after-school club was advertised as consisting of fun and exciting activities for children, including science projects, community service, puzzles and games, nature activities, arts and crafts, and of course, snacks. You can see over here an image of what I believe is like Facebook. No, I guess their Twitter account, talking about an after-school Satan club coming to Tennessee, launching on January 10th, yada, 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 so on and so forth. We last wrote about the Satanic Temple after they raffled off a free abortion to promote the organization's religious abortion ritual, hosted SatanCon 2023, billed as the largest satanic gathering in history, and opened up new abortion clinic to murder babies and a satanic ritual. And of course, their erection of a Baphomet statue in the Iowa Capitol, which we've talked about extensively. Safe to say that the organization itself is a mockery of actual religion, true or false religion. It's a mockery of the entire thing because it uses terms and framework for Satan that they have nothing to do with what any actual Christian religion, certainly, but any religion at all actually accepts Satan as being. They're basically just playing loose and fast with terms in order to pull this off, but we're not particularly surprised. The way that this should go, by the way, before we move on to the next headline, is that families that take their children to these kinds of things should be roundly denounced openly, using the free speech rights of Christian families and families that would disagree with this. They are entirely permitted to publicly and openly decry this for the evil and the mockery that it actually is, and that needs to be the next step for this school system. Under our system of government, it would be a hard thing to try to stop a voluntary club of any sort that isn't functionally breaking the law. But we can certainly express and shame those express our displeasure and shame those involved with it. We all have the right to do that. Next headline at protestia.com. Brent Leatherwood and the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission regurgitate Democrat talking points on Joe Biden's supposed, I would call it supposed at this point, because we haven't seen the guy in 5 days, but his supposed exit from the presidential campaign, reinforcing the ideological alignment between the ERLC and the blue-haired harpies running the Democrats' war room. Brent Leatherwood, president of the SBC's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, has shared his thoughts on Joe Biden dropping out of the race. They are perfectly on brand. Commenting on the exit, Leatherwood insists we should all express our appreciation that President Biden has put the needs of the nation above his personal ambition. Despite what some partisans would say, to walk away from power is a selfless act, the kind that has become all too rare in our culture. It's an obscene, dishonest statement, both for how little it reflects anything resembling the truth of Biden's predicament, as well as how little respect Brent Leatherwood has for himself and his readers, rather than giving them straight dope. That's how our article describes it. Leatherwood is regurgitating frothy talking points fresh from the DNC's stinking gullet and telling you it's a 5-course meal of truth and integrity. Put it another way, he's urinating on your head and telling you it's raining. For those of you that have heard that phraseology, this is an image of the post from X Twitter from the ERLC, where it got roundly ratioed. Let's put it that way. It's an awful take. Biden dropping out of the race, assuming that it's what we all think it is at this point, is due to his failing health and his senility, which we've all been watching and seeing and noticing and commenting on for several years now. Really, I mean, for most of his term. He has been dropping out because he made the miscalculation of revealing to the world how senile and decrepit he's been for years. He bumbled through the debate with Donald Trump in a manner that Democrats and their ally reporters weren't able to hide, conceal, or cover up, resulting in historically low favorability numbers within his own party and a surging increase in the fortunes of Donald Trump. Every poll put the exclamation point on the fact that if Biden goes up against the former president in November, his party will be crushed and decimated, much to the dismay of Leatherwood and the hangers-on at the ERLC. Read more about this over at protestia.com. Next headline at Protestia, Francis Collins and Walter Kim unironically hosting an event on, quote, rebuilding trust in science and faith. Okay. Former director of the National Institutes of Health, Francis Collins, and president of the National Association of Evangelicals, Walter Kim, are joining forces on July 27th to lead a talk on truth, science, faith, and trust, and all the ways to rebuild trust in their type of institutions. An ironic endeavor given the outsized roles they have played in eroding it. You can read about this at Protestia, but the event abstract says, as the COVID-19 pandemic revealed, we have become not just a hyper-partisan society, but also a deeply cynical one, distrustful of traditional sources of knowledge and wisdom. Okay. No, we're distrustful of you guys, really. We're not distrustful of science in and of itself. We're distrustful of the people that perverted it, like Francis Collins. Skepticism of vaccines led to the needless death of at least 230,000 Americans. I suspect that's a lie. Do your own research is now a rallying cry in many online rabbit holes, yet experts aren't perfect either. We can make mistakes and institutions can lose their moral compass. We would agree with that. And the National Association of Evangelicals is one such example. So is the NIH. How can we navigate through all this, they ask, and how can scientists and people of faith play effective roles in re-anchoring us? Yeah, that ship might have sailed, fellows. Yeah, we don't trust you any further than we could throw you, as the old adage goes. We could not think of two less qualified people to give a talk like this. Collins, who was pushed and promoted hard by Russell Moore, David French, Tim Keller, and Ed Stetzer, played a massive role in destroying trust. He released a statement for Pride Month in which he publicly revealed himself to be thoroughly compromised on the Christians' view of LGBTQ issues, the scriptures, offering them his personal support as a, quote, ally, and regurgitating all the progressive talking points he could muster. During COVID, Collins was trotted out to push 6 feet of social distancing, which we now know was nonsense and didn't have any actual evidence behind it whatsoever, lockdowns, and then the absolute need to mask, criticizing anyone who offered alternatives. He argued that in-person public schooling was a higher priority than in-person church, openly supported doing experiments on fetal tissue on account that he doesn't believe human embryos to be life but only, quote, potential life, and he argued that scientists should use bodies of aborted babies for scientific experimentation. We have all of the links for this in our article at protestia.com, but safe to say Francis Collins is about as antichrist as you could get in this context, in this conversation, and should be roundly ignored, criticized, avoided at all costs by any faithful Christian that is expecting a representative of what we truly believe to exist in the scientific community. Next headline, last headline for this intelligence briefing on the 22nd of July, 2024. Robert Jeffress's Sunday comments about the church burning down. This is First Baptist Church of Dallas. He said, "It's like those flames represented the flames of hell." First Baptist Church pastor Robert Jeffress addressed his church on Sunday, 2 days after a 4-alarm fire burned up the historic portion of his 134-year-old SBC church, telling congregants, "It's like the flames represented the flames of hell, and they were destroying the truth that I had banked my life and eternity on." Fortunately, I'll just insert some commentary in here. Fortunately, buildings are not the church. It's the place that we gather, and it's very sad to see such a historic structure, such just a beautiful structure, damaged in this way. The noted SBC megachurch, which comprises several buildings in the downtown Dallas area, including a $130 million main sanctuary building it built in 2013, was otherwise intact, save for its old historic building, which was built in 1890 and came to serve as the secondary chapel and off-site meeting place. It's a sad thing to see. It seems like nobody was injured, so that's a really good thing. And we'll see what they're able to do as far as restoring the historic part of the church. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this edition of the Intelligence Briefing for the 22nd of July, 2024. Stay tuned to protestia.com for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news, and we'll see you next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.